Well, hello there, people. Welcome back to my channel. And today, unfortunately, I'm doing a video that I was hoping that I didn't have to do. But as a part of the video or the type of videos that I do here, I do want to show you the bad stuff also. And this one is a bad, or it is a bad thing going on here. This engine here is a rebuilt standard engine, as I transformed this car from a monster engine car to a standard horsepower Cosworth. And what I noticed now, after sorting out all these small issues like the unstable idle and the high idle and getting stuff to work as it was supposed to, I've noticed that the car does have some Bluesmoke on Overrun, which to some might be normal, but for me it is not normal. It's just a sign of oil coming into the combustion chamber, and I have to find out why is that happening, because you don't want oil in the combustion chamber. But on the other hand, on a worn or even worn out engine, of course that is a normal thing, but on a freshly rebuilt engine you shouldn't expect to see any severe oil consumption or stuff like that. The amount of oil or the Bluesmoke coming out of the tailpipe here isn't severe in any way, but I'm doing all the small details, so every little inch of Bluesmoke to me is something that I have to sort out. And again, it's on Overrun, so that means that it happens when the engine is under vacuum. And there's a rule of thumb how you can differentiate between Bluesmoke on, like, when you're giving it some throttle, or is there Bluesmoke on Overrun. If you have Bluesmoke when giving it some throttle, that means for the most part that you have some blow-by or poor piston rings, because then you have you have blow-by basically, and you have oil coming out from the crankcase and into the combustion chamber. When on Overrun, on the other hand, that means that when you're letting off the throttle, that means that there's vacuum on the inlet side, So if you have worn valve stem seals or worn valve stem guides, that means that there's oil coming from the top of the engine and being sucked through the valve stem seals. And that is the rule of thumb, how you kind of find out where is the leak coming from. And as soon as I noticed that I had oil or Bluesmoke coming out of the tailpipe on Overrun, at least I was crossing my fingers that it would be a valve stem seal problem, because that is a lot easier to tackle. But I also have to say that this is something that I'm gonna talk to my engine builder about. They did most of the assembly, like the cylinder head assembly and the engine block assembly, but I put the whole engine together in a way. So they did the machining work and stuff. I did the assembly work, like putting the cylinder head on the engine block and the oil pan and stuff like that. So they obviously done something bad here, and this is not the first issue that I'm having with this engine build. So, but I'm not gonna talk too much about that. That's a case between me and the machine shop. But I'm doing this video to somewhat document stuff, but also to show you how you can spot the difference in a Bluesmoke condition. Like, do you have worn piston rings? Then you will have Bluesmoke when you're giving it some throttle. Do you have Bluesmoke on the Overrun? Most likely, and in most cases, you have a valve stem seal problem. You can also have a PCV problem causing this, but like basically it has to do with piston rings or valve stem seals. And in this case, it does seem to be a valve stem seal issue. So the most easy thing to do to check this is to have a look at the inlet valve stems And how you can do that is basically to remove the injectors like I've done here. I'm not going to take off the exhaust manifold because that is a hassle. And like I said also, it is basically only happening on the inlet valves because that is where you see the vacuum happening. There's no vacuum on the exhaust valves. So that is why it's important to check the inlet valves. And the most easy way to do this is, like I said, to remove the injectors. And I have a camera here, like an inspection camera, and I have put it in the first cylinder on the first valve. And look at this, people. Oil on the back of the valve, which clearly indicates, and it's just a what am I gonna say? It's a verification of what I saw when I removed the spark plugs. Like, I've changed spark plugs 2 times. I changed or replaced the spark plugs after 500 kilometers, I think it was, and now I have ran like 200, 300 kilometers with these new spark plugs, and I could see oil-fouled spark plugs mainly on 1, 2, and 4 cylinder. The number 3 almost looks like a lean condition compared to the 3 other ones, but it isn't a lean condition. It's just the other one being somewhat darker, a bit. They're not super wet of oil. They're just like, I wish I could show you the pictures because it's not as bad as you might think. But to me, it's like I have to sort it out, basically. So what the spark plugs told me is I have an issue on cylinder 1, 2, and 4. And you can clearly see that I do have an issue on cylinder 1. And if I now try to move it over to valve number 2 on cylinder 1, see that is clearly fine. So now I have to concentrate on getting the camera in here. This is cylinder 2. You can clearly see oil on the back of the valve. This is valve number 3 in a way. And this is valve number 4. We're still on cylinder 2. Pretty clean. And now I'm gonna skip number 3 because there's nothing there. They're clean on the back of the valve. So I'm just gonna show you the number 4. Give me a second. This is the valve number 7 on cylinder 4. And you can clearly see oil residue on the back of the valve. Now we're gonna have a look at the last valve, which is perfectly fine. So people, that is a mission complete. I do have a valve stem seal problem, which is yet to be figured out why. Is there something happened, or has something happened to the valve stem seal when they mounted it, or have they actually mounted the wrong valve stem seals? Because on these Cosworth engines, there's, I can't remember which is which, but there's a 7mm one and an 8mm one. I do reckon that the exhaust valves is the 8mm and the inlet valves is the 7mm. So there's 2 things that might have happened, and that is something, they scratched up the valve stem seal when mounting it onto the valve, meaning not using like the plastic straw on the where the locking thingies sit on the retainer. They just slided it on without protecting the valve stem seal, or they mixed up the valve stem seals, like to exhaust and or between exhaust and inlet valves. So that is the next step. I just had to take you along here to show you what can cause blue smoke condition and how you can check it. So this is definitely the easiest way to check it if you have a camera, that is. Not everyone has it. It's not mine personally. This is where I work. We own it, or they own it, the garage where I work. So anyways, I don't want to drag it out, people. It's very sad to have these issues, but I do want to have this car working perfectly, so I'm not tolerating any blue smoke coming out of the tailpipe, even though it isn't that much, but it's just too much. Because one thing I have to say is that if you don't deal with this kind of stuff, what's going to happen is, as soon as this oil consumption gets worse in a way, you have just more and more oil accumulating on the back of the valve stem, or on the back of the valve head, I mean. And eventually you will have an unsealing or non-sealing valve, and you will have what is it called? Oh, I can't remember, but you get the idea that it won't fix itself. So when you have oil or carbon deposits collecting on the valves, it's not a good thing. So it's very good to see that it is somewhat of an easy fix. I was a bit afraid of it being like piston rings not seating properly or whatever. That could still be an issue. I mean, if they screwed up the valve stem seal assembly procedure, what could be found on the piston rings, I really don't know. So, but at least I found a possible culprit here that matches what I saw on the spark plugs. So that is a good thing. You have to stay positive, and now I just have to deal with taking off the cam cover, cams, take out the valve stem seals, and have a look at how they do look like. Do I find something that matches up with what I found already? So people, I'm gonna leave it here. I really hope you liked the video. I hope that you can use this video for some that you have some use for it in a way. Please leave a comment if you have a comment. Thumbs up if you do have a thumbs up. If you have thumb it down, well, I don't care. That's up to you. I appreciate you watching the video anyways. And thank you very much for watching. So I'll see you guys in the future videos, I hope. Bye bye bye. See ya.